5 years ago, a Garda stationed in Ballyshannon began a statement of complaint to his superiors. It is with great regret that I put to paper a report of this nature, he wrote. The complaint went straight to his chief superintendent. The author wanted to ensure it got to Garda headquarters. He described untouchables, untouched by the law, and an old PALS Act he alleged operated in Ballyshannon district. The complaint contained extraordinary and serious allegations against serving officers. It reflected major concern felt amongst a number of rank-and-file Gardaí in Donegal. This programme is about disturbing aspects of law, order and public life in South Donegal. We examine a number of separate allegations that local power, influence, money, and at times the law itself have been misused and abused. We find frustration and anger among ordinary Gardaí over the way Garda headquarters handles complaints. This year, Superintendent Dominic Murray was transferred from Ballyshannon without reason after 14 years there. We examine this case of the failure of law in Bundoran, a French Breton family harassed and worse for more than a year and no one prosecuted. It's now, Jan and Swazik, it's now 1985. All this happened 3 years ago. What do you want done?
What we want justice done.
You want justice done?
Because the children have suffered for all that time.
Our inquiry stretched to Donegal County Council to examine worries about the planning process. This story involves gaming, gambling, and eyebrows raised over seemingly unwise relationships. We look at this Garda who tried to enforce the law on gaming and felt hindered. His problems, we're told, came from within the force.
They're totally illegal and everything else, and nothing is done about them. And the only man that gets done, if a big man's son gets into trouble, well, he gets away with it.
Some Gardaí risked their careers and made scathing criticisms of senior officers. They put their complaints in writing. We look at the connection between this wealthy businessman and county councillor and a county council engineer. Their relationship in a building development poses questions about public office.
I think they should work within the guidelines everyone else has and not take advantage of special privileges.
We also examine how Superintendent Murray allowed his reputation to be damaged over a meeting in this hotel 6 years ago. Some argue it's just the way we do things in Ireland, but others here in Bundoran, as in Ballyshannon and Donegal town, saw cause for concern and tried to raise the alarm. Jan Ruiz is an unemployed French Breton living in Bundoran. He says the district Garda superintendent stood aside while his family were harassed, assaulted and intimidated by a local millionaire businessman. He wants justice done. His wife Swazik speaks of the nightmare of Charlie Fergus's continuing attacks. In July 1982, the Ruiz family's peace was dramatically interrupted by the raging temper of Charlie Fergus.
Between 8 and 9, Mr. Fergus burst into the dining room.
At the time, the Ruiz family lived in a chalet owned by Mr. Fergus. They remembered it vividly.
He grabbed me a hold and dragged me into the hall door. And he wanted to fight with me. And I said, I was shattered. I was really wondering if I was dreaming or it was a nightmare. And then he swiveled me and pushed me through a bay window. I really passed through the bay window. The glass was shattered, and I felt heavily on the ground.
You say he pushed you through the window?
He did, yes.
And you smashed the window with your body?
With my back, yeah.
And you landed?
I landed on the grass.
He damaged my blouse, and he tore the sleeve and damaged the front of my blouse.
The Ruizes lived in the chalet under a business contract with Charlie Fergus, but the business deal ended and Fergus wanted them out.
He came for 4 full days. He came the 9th of July. He came in less than 11 or 12 hours. He came 11 times. We could not sleep the night between the 8th and the 9th of July. We had no sleep at all because he never stopped coming. And during that night, when the guards were taking our statements, he came 3 times on the grounds of the cinema, and because he saw the patrol car, he just turned and went away. And then the whole following day, the 9th of July, the whole day, he never stopped coming. And it was the 10th of July when he came back again. Then the guards could witness he was dancing on the roof, and he promised us he would crush the roof of the chalet to get us out.
What do you mean dancing on the roof?
He was really jumping,
and
on the roof like a mad devil.
2 Gardaí and a squad car drove in and saw Fergus on the chalet roof. At no stage was Mr. Fergus charged. At Ballyshannon, Superintendent Dom Murray prepared a file, sent it to the DPP, described Charlie Fergus as the principal culprit and recommended prosecution. Charlie Fergus comes from a wealthy local Fianna Fáil family of property. His own house and riding stables are impressive. He owns the Melvin Hotel at nearby Kinloch, the Ocean View Caravan Park in Bundoran itself, and other substantial property, as well as significant construction interests in Britain, where he mostly lives. Charlie Fergus denies everything, despite independent and Garda witnesses.
Part of the agreement was that he would, on a temporary basis, be allowed to use a property known as the chalet. And when the project proved to be negative, then the agreement came to should, in all respects, be terminated, and he leave the chalet.
Well, he didn't leave the chalet.
Yes, he did.
He didn't leave it at that time, and it led to rather ugly scenes between you and he.
Nothing to any great extent. There were some serious verbals, but out with that, nothing serious.
Serious verbals?
Yes.
What about the nights of 8th, 9th, 10th of July in 1982?
That has nothing got to do with the chalet situation.
How do you mean? How do you mean it has nothing to do with the chalet? What he is saying is that you came along and you smashed windows in the chalet. You threw him through the chalet windows. You smashed the windows with flower pots and damaged his car.
Total fabrication.
Total fabrication?
Total fabrication, absolutely total fabrication, you know.
Yes. What about the witnesses who saw you?
I'll be happy to hear from any witnesses. As far as I am concerned, it is total fabrication.
In July and October 1982, Jan Ruiz got High Court injunctions restraining Charlie Fergus from assaulting and molesting the Ruiz family. Mr. Fergus even tries to deny the existence of these injunctions.
I have heard about this High Court injunction. I have never seen one, and none has ever been served on me. And I asked my solicitor about this, and he has said to me, as far as anybody can go to the High Court for whatever reason they choose and acquire an injunction, all I can state as a categorical fact, I have never been summoned to the High Court, and I have not had any injunction served upon me in the manner that you have described, or in any other manner for that part.
But I've seen the injunction.
Great. I have not had any injunction served upon me.
Well, I have it here. I mean, it's
Pleased to see it.
And it restrains you from molesting, assaulting, or interfering with the Ruizes, and each of them, and from molesting, assaulting, or interfering with their children, committing trespass in relation to the chalet adjacent to the Grand Central Cinema, West End, Bundoran, in the county of Donegal, in which the plaintiffs, that's the Ruizes, are in lawful occupation. This is the High Court. And it is ordered that the plaintiffs' solicitors be at liberty to notify forthwith the making of this order to the defendant, which is you, by letter.
I have not received any letter, and I have not had that document ever served upon me.
Well, it's a High Court judgment by Justice Barron on the basis that they were in lawful occupation. That's it there.
I can assure you that I have not had any knowledge of that document, nor has that document ever been served upon me, sir.
Well, were they in lawful occupation?
They were not in lawful occupation.
They weren't.
No.
But Justice Barron of the High Court saw the agreement and decided they were.
Justice Barron at the High Court, if that document is legitimate, had never had the opportunity, has never had the opportunity of hearing my end of the argument in relation to their occupation of the chalet. I have not had any representation at the High Court at any stage.
At one stage, Charlie Fergus was convicted for assault and malicious damage against the Ruizes. It happened in Sligo after a chase from Bundoran.
That was an unfortunate incident, and yes, I, on the advantage of hindsight, would agree that the situation that developed on that day was a situation that should never have happened, and the judge in question was perfectly right in his description of the incident.
The Sligo judge described Fergus's behaviour as absolutely abominable. The Ruizes wondered why convictions like this couldn't be got in Ballyshannon. For the record, at the second High Court injunction hearing, Charlie Fergus's case was made on his behalf by counsel. For well over a year, the Ruizes reported to the Gardaí allegations of harassment and worse from Fergus. These pictures show Mr. Fergus at the chalet during the period in question. He was photographed by Mr. Ruiz as he left. This picture shows Superintendent Murray on the left, partly hidden, actively involved in the case, standing at the scene with Mr. Fergus and two Gardaí. In this long Garda statement, Jan Ruiz was to list a number of complaints against Superintendent Murray. He alleged that the superintendent advised they must choose between a civil and criminal action. If true, this was wholly wrong advice. Civil and criminal actions can be taken together. Jan Ruiz also told of uninvited visits by Superintendent Murray to their home. When Superintendent Murray came here, did he say anything about Mr. Fergus at those times?
Well, on at least two occasions, he mentioned that Mr. Fergus was rather a nice man. And
he was rather a nice man.
Yes, and that maybe, imply that we should make peace with him, and he said then that we couldn't have both actions, civil and criminal actions.
Well, what did you think were the purpose behind his visits? As you say, you didn't ask him to come.
No.
Well, clearly he was trying to get us withdrawing our complaint.
Just say that again, Jan. You believe he was trying to get you to withdraw your complaint?
Yes.
But this was the superintendent of the Gardaí in the area.
Yeah.
But that's a very serious charge to make against him, isn't it?
Well, I maintain it because it's the bare truth.
Do you remember Superintendent Murray describing Mr. Fergus as a nice man?
Yeah.
In your house?
Yeah. And when in our house here and at the chalet as well.
Superintendent Murray played a very active role in this affair. It took an exceptionally long 7 months for the DPP to decide against prosecution, and after a peculiar incident. It was here in Bundoran Main Street that Superintendent Murray produced a piece of paper. It was the statement of Mr. and Mrs. Ruiz withdrawing their complaint, but was compiled by the district officer, Mr. Murray. He asked them to sign it there and then, which they did, on the back of their car. It was yet another unorthodox intervention by the district officer. Nearly a year later, Superintendent Murray conceded in writing that the Ruizes needed Garda protection when Charlie Fergus was in Bundoran. Still, he was not prosecuted.
We felt that some Gardaí didn't agree with that way of dealing with us.
Which Gardaí now?
Well, the two Gardaí who took our statements the first night Fergus assaulted us were anxious, I believe, to get Fergus dealt with properly according to the law.
And who were they? Can you remember?
I beg your pardon?
Can you remember which policemen they were?
Oh yeah,
Michael
Lawless and Tom Prendergast.
In his letter to the Minister for Justice, Yannick Ruiz specifically complained about the role of Superintendent Murray, who, he said, had not charged Fergus. He said the superintendent had behaved strangely. Ruiz was particularly concerned about what he saw as a relationship between the superintendent and Mr. Fergus. He referred to a few dedicated Gardaí who had built up a file. He named guards Michael Lawless and Tom Prendergast. The minister was unable to help. Mr. Noonan said the Garda authorities had acted properly and within the law. A complaint to the Garda Commissioner got a similar result. In a 5-line reply, Mr. Ruiz was told the Gardaí had conducted an in-depth study and that all matters requiring Garda attention have been dealt with as deemed appropriate.
When the events happened at the chalet, should have been locked up, and nothing would have happened after that. We have lived 3 years in a pure nightmare only because the police has done nothing, only because Mr. Murray hasn't done his job. He is paid as a superintendent to do that job. He has never done it. And we lived 3 years of a nightmare only because he hasn't done anything.
Seaside Bundoran lives on tourists. Its money-spinning gaming halls aren't all good.
You haven't got to have a degree in anything to walk up the town of Bundoran, walk into every arcade and see that the law's been broke day in, day out. Every machine, well, most machines are totally illegal. You go there on a Saturday or Thursday, or Thursday and Friday, I should say. There's people that are drawing their dole, it goes in and they put in there. The old age pensioners are putting their money in there. Every day that those machines operate, they're operating illegally, and I think they should be summoned.
We tested the machines at one arcade, belonging to local Fianna Fáil councillor Sean McAniff. Many machines paid out 200 times the legal limit. Some declared a jackpot 2,000 times above the limit, £1,000. Recently, Bundoran UDC voted to keep gaming halls open, including that of its chairman, Sean McAniff. Councillor Mulhern objected. Gaming brings a lot of money, especially for arcade owners. Ownership of Bundoran's 2 big hotels make the McAniffs very big in the town. Superintendent Murray has had a long-standing relationship with Sean McAniff, which worried some. The McAniffs own the golf course, where the two were regular partners. Sean McAniff has resisted the Gardaí over gaming.
The situation is that we are claiming that these machines are legal. You can say they're illegal, but the courts of this country have not decided that they're illegal.
But people have been convicted here in Donegal.
And their cases are under appeal.
But they've been convicted.
I have been convicted.
Of breaking the law.
But I'm not breaking the law. I have my case under appeal while a district court judge says they're illegal. The higher courts have not yet decided.
I have other hands tied. I mean, there was one guard in the area who did prosecute, and as far as I can see, he's been pushed from pillar to post all over the country.
You're talking about Garda Grennan, are you?
That's who I'm talking about, yeah.
Garda Jarlath Grennan has been fighting a transfer order following his attempt to enforce gaming laws. 5 years ago, Donegal's Chief Superintendent McGing issued an instruction to all stations to enforce the Gaming Act. Garda Grennan took the instruction seriously in Bundoran as well as in Ballyshannon. He found arcades not complying. He reported Coyles and O'Neill saying it was OK with Superintendent Murray for them to carry on. Garda Grennan booked 6 arcades. One was Sean McAniff's in Bundoran. He He sent his full report through normal channels. Garda Grennan reported McAniff telling him he'd only comply with the law when the others did. In effect, Garda Grennan was reporting Councillor McAniff as defying the law.
He can report what he has said, but as far as I was concerned, I got my summonses.
You didn't comply with the law as he asked you.
Why should I comply with the law? Because I'm claiming that these machines are legal. The inspector at the last district court in Ballyshannon put it to me that they were illegal, and I told him in the court of law that they were legal.
Garda Grennan complained in writing about his gaming hall experiences. The complaint was investigated and no action taken. Counter-allegations against him were withdrawn. He believes that afterwards he was internally obstructed from properly doing his job as juvenile liaison officer. Since then, 2 attempts have been made to transfer Garda Grennan to Ballybofey for non-disciplinary reasons. Councillor Mulhern supports Grennan. Recently, he tried to get one of his own relatives banned by a Bundoran arcade owner.
I said, well, it's your illegal machines to bring him in. He says, there's nothing illegal about these machines. I said, well, if you're not going to bar them, I says, I'll go and see the guards. He says, what can they do to that? Something to that effect. He said, what can they do? He says, we've already got Greenan on the run. I thought it was Greenan, he said. But at that moment, I didn't realise Greenan was a guard.
So far, Garda Grennan has staved off his transfer. At one stage, he asked headquarters for files to do with his case, but was refused. His fight has lasted 3 years. Recently, he won an injunction against Commissioner Wren and stopped the transfer. Garda Grennan believes he has been victimised for carrying out an instruction from his chief superintendent. He has had a court victory, but for what? Garda Grennan is a well-qualified guard who now believes his career will advance no further.
He is a good guard, and as I say, I'd say 95% of the guards are the same. Unfortunately, as I say, by what I learned about Greenan, it would seem they're afraid of their life to move because to be pushed from pillar to post. As far as I understand about this guard at the moment now, he's as a High Court action out at his own expense. Trying to stop from being hounded for actually standing up against machines in Donegal.
Sean McAniff has wide business interests, including this Ballyshannon development. The company which developed it has managed to magnify the land's value through planning permissions. The sale of sites brought in £80,000 to £90,000. The company is Set Developments Limited. Chairman of the company is Councillor Sean McAniff. He has declared his directorship of Set Developments. But Set Developments have had the services of a particular technical expert, which the public were not told about by Mr. McAniff. The Rowletters have had a running battle with Set Developments over a site they bought. They've seen too many septic tanks here and too much smelly sludge. This is overflowing sewage, and these children are playing beside it.
Well, from my son's house down to the main road, there is a sewer there which is accommodating 3 houses at the moment, with 1 more or 2 to be joined, and there's an awful odour from that sewer.
An awful smell.
The awful smell, yes.
Right.
Yes.
The original owner of this land, Robert Johnson, found it hard to get this type of planning permission. He may not have tried hard enough or had their expertise. Anyhow, Set Developments got permissions for a string of septic tanks. These tanks have caused problems and worries about public health. Francis Rowleather remembers about the trouble given by one.
Sewage was backing up, and I had to have the plumber out on a few occasions to clear it.
Backing up through the pipes, out through the cistern? Or
yes, well, you would get the toilets or the outside, there's a manhole you have outside the house, and then they would have to go into the field, the plumber had to go into the field and clear it. And I'm not surprised now that the gentleman occupying that same house is having a problem. I can see it. And this is what we're worried about, that the reason we're bringing this into the open, and I think we have to speak for the rest of the neighbours. If this is not stopped, meaning if we are not to have any more septic tanks passed by Donegal County Council or whatever, that we will have a health problem.
In 1974, Set Developments got permission for a number of septic tanks on a strictly limited basis, 2 years in fact, which was later extended, pending the arrival of a new public sewer. The 2 years has become 11 and still no sign of the sewer. Without permission for septic tanks on this land, Set Developments wouldn't have been able to sell sites for that £80,000 to £90,000. Mr. McAniff's company has done well. One of the company's other 3 directors is Mrs. Deirdre O'Connell. Mrs. O'Connell is also company secretary. Mrs. O'Connell is the wife of Patrick J. O'Connell. He's stationed here as Assistant County Engineer for Ballyshannon. P.J. O'Connell was Assistant County Engineer when Set Developments was formed. And the Assistant County Engineer, Mr. O'Connell, signed this map as engineer for Set Developments. Neither Mr. O'Connell nor Mr. McAniff have admitted their business relationship. The row letters have had direct dealings with Sean McAniff and P.J. O'Connell in a boundary dispute with Set Developments Limited. They believe they've been badly treated by Donegal County Council. It began when they objected to plans to build on this land adjacent to their house. The land already has septic tanks on it. It was sold on by Set Developments to its new owner, but the company had an interest in permission to build being granted. The row letters were adamant that another house here on top of existing septic tanks and with its own tank would be trouble.
Oh, it's raining.
Twice in writing and once in person, the row letters objected to this planning application. They asked to be informed in time to appeal. They weren't. The planning officer wrote that, through an oversight, they'd not been told in time to appeal, and that this was sincerely regretted. This was a full 5 months after the row letters wrote, raising objections. They appealed to On Board Planola anyway. They were told it was invalid as not being made in time. Their right to appeal had been frustrated by the council's failure to tell them soon enough. We got our own expert advice. We brought a consultant engineer to inspect the site and the planning files at Lifford. His verdict on the site adjacent to the row letters, too small to take the proposed house and the existing septic tanks with their percolation areas. He said Donegal County Council's treatment of the row letter objections was less than satisfactory. He criticised access and gradient of the roads permitted by the planners. And roads are, after all, P.J. O'Connell's specific planning function. And unsatisfactory was his verdict on the number of septic tanks on the site. The time has come for Donegal County Council to look again at the Set Development files. Assistant County Engineer O'Connell reported on aspects of Set Development's planning applications. Councillor McAniff was working not just with Mrs. O'Connell, but also her husband, who denies it. He told Today Tonight he was never professionally engaged by Set Developments. But we've come across this sworn affidavit from Mr. O'Connell, dated 1982. I am the engineer and surveyor for Set Developments, he declared, during a legal dispute involving the company. He gave details of the 13 sites he'd worked on for Set Developments, and he duly signed it. Mr. O'Connell has never declared this interest as required by law. Company chairman, Mr. McAniff, has denied his company engaged the services of P.J. O'Connell as an engineer or in any professional capacity. We approached Mr. O'Connell about his role in Set Developments while working as assistant county engineer. Mr. O'Connell has declared his wife's directorship and said he occasionally did plans for planning applications. He avoided stating his own role with the company. Set Developments chairman Sean McAniff told Today Tonight he wouldn't allow the company engage Mr. O'Connell as its engineer. Clearly he thinks it's wrong. Mr. McAniff's denial seems strange when you take a look at some of the company's own correspondence. This solicitor's letter was written for their client, Set Developments Limited. It refers more than once to our client's engineer, Patrick J. O'Connell, and describes the work he has done in that capacity. Sean McAniff was directly involved in the matter referred to in this letter. This map, lodged at Land Registry by Set Developments, shows P.J. O'Connell as engineer. There's little doubt that things were not as they seemed.
The two gentlemen in question, which are Sean McAniff and P.J. O'Connell, were not working for Donegal County Council. This would not have been allowed to happen. I have to believe that.
Well, they're both in public office, and I think they're bound by everything like everyone else. They should not use personal business with their official business. They should not look for any personal advantages, which in a development like this are very obvious.
The Rowletters are sorry for the land's original owner. He felt planning conditions were too tough and he sold cheaply.
I feel a little bit, I suppose, bitter, I suppose. But whatever I feel, you can imagine, it's nothing compared to what Mr. Johnson must feel. I mean, that man must feel. If he feels acrimonious, I think he's justified in feeling that way.
The story of set developments tells a lot about the use of power in Donegal. Sean McAniff and P.J. O'Connell, the one a wealthy county councillor, the other a senior council official, worked together in a manner which must strain public confidence in Donegal's planning process. In the eyes of some who must live with the mess on this development, Councillor McAniff and Assistant County Engineer O'Connell abused their positions of public trust.
See the complete Uno range at your Fiat dealer and satisfy your driving curiosity.
What does JVC stand for? In Hi-Fi, JVC Audio Systems have the range and price to fulfill every need. For component or rack systems, make sure it's a JVC.
The Farmer's Journal. Essential reading because it gets to the root of farming matters. The Journal digs deep into every issue.
The West Germans value natural gas so much, they turn diplomatic somersaults to pipe it all the way from the icy wastes of Siberia. The Canadians are no strangers to icy winters, but the country has rich stores of natural gas. They have been swift to capitalize on their good fortune by taking the world's cleanest, most efficient natural fuel into their homes and industries. While the Japanese need natural gas so badly to help clean up their pollution problems that they send tankers 6,000 miles to collect it from the Middle East. Luckily, we don't have to do that. There is an abundance of natural gas lying just off our coast. It's been there for millions of years, waiting for its time to shine. And this is our pipeline, running snugly underground, pumping this precious fuel back into the Irish economy. Because of it, all our futures look brighter, now that we are bringing it home from home. Natural gas, the energy to do it better.
Some cubes cover up natural flavor, so you end up tasting the cube and not the food. Pretty soon, everything tastes the same. Knorr stock cubes are different. Made to make real stock, they bring out the real taste in your stews and casseroles. Next time you're cooking, uncover the real taste with a Knorr stock cube. Knorr, the real stock cube.
Although Chopin started composing at the age of 7, a cassette player powered by Gold Seal alkaline long-life batteries will record everything he ever wrote. And still have the power to record the complete works of Bizet. Nothing outlasts Gold Seal.
See the spectacular Option Show at the Guinness Hop Store, now open every day.
Homestead Irish-made cheddar and cheese slices. Homestead brings value home.
Meet Fletch, whose love life is more dangerous than his job, at a cinema near you from Friday.
Frog in your throat? Take a hack and kiss your frogs goodbye.
Save and invest with First National, the friendliest building society in the world.
Children love the delicious and nourishing wholemeal goodness of new Farley's rusks with wholemeal.
Garda Michael Lawless is 15 years in the force. He had serious worries about the running of Ballyshannon district for much of that time. He was clerical secretary to Superintendent Murray for 3 years and had regular confrontations with the superintendent. He's known to be greatly concerned about how the law treated Jan and Swazik Ruiz, believing that Charlie Fergus should have been swiftly prosecuted. He was there at the chalet along with Superintendent Murray during the worst time. Garda Lawless is regarded locally as a straight cop, a stickler for law and order. Garda Lawless was insistent on booking drunk driving offenders. He regards roads like this as amongst the most dangerous in Donegal. He complained in writing that his diligence was unpopular with the superintendent. His written accusation was that Superintendent Murray had mislaid files relating to one case. In the end, the man was convicted. Michael Lawless's complaints about practices in Ballyshannon went far beyond a mere drunk driving case. Garda headquarters sent a chief superintendent to investigate Garda Lawless's complaint. Nobody was disciplined, and the most serious of charges have remained unanswered and unproven. Shortly afterwards, a non-disciplinary order was made to transfer Lawless to Glenties, but he successfully appealed.
There's a number of guards here that have high regard for them anyway. The kids have anyway, especially Michael Lawless. He's seen as a fair guard, and that he treats everybody equal. He'll nick me, he'll nick any of the big boys, or the same for their sons or daughters, you know.
Why?
He treats them fairly.
Why would anybody on the streets or any people in the town know one guard in particular, like Michael Lawless?
Well, I think he's actually been seen that he does operate the law impartially. That, as I say, he has done a number for drunken driving here, some of the big boys, and likewise he's done smaller men too. But the thing is, he has been seen that he will operate, that money is no bar to him, you know, it doesn't matter how big you are. The law is the law. And I think it's the best way, really, because, as I said, the kids in this town have a high regard for Mike Lawless.
Garda Lawless remains on the beat. His former superintendent has been transferred without reason to Dublin. Garda Tom Prendergast is well regarded locally. He has had a few serious run-ins with Charlie Fergus. On one occasion he tried breathalyzing Fergus. It happened at Bundoran Station. Prendergast complained that the superintendent intervened to stop him taking the test by bringing Fergus into his office. Like all these Gardaí, Tom Prendergast could not be interviewed by Today Tonight, but we're told he is also concerned about the Garda handling of the Ruiz-Fergus case. Ex-Garda Jim McWeeny resigned from the force 6 years ago. He left largely in disgust and in protest over unsettled complaints he'd made. His departing certificate of service marked his general conduct very good, the word of the Assistant Commissioner Fanning. He also had running written battles with Superintendent Murray. The superintendent accused McWeeny of contributing little or nothing to the administration of law for years. McWeeny sought legal advice on the allegations and wrote saying he'd welcome a full inquiry by the chief superintendent. It didn't happen. Jim McWeeny continued to complain about a series of missing or incomplete files. Garda headquarters investigated these charges after McWeeny left. He heard nothing. He wrote again to the Commissioner's office and says he heard nothing again. And Garda Grennan, who got an injunction to block his transfer, awaits the final outcome. Meanwhile, he is still in Donegal. Another concern we came across involved a citizen and this bookmaker's office in Ballyshannon. A local doctor told Superintendent Murray he would object to the bookie's licence over a disputed bet. The licence was renewed by the superintendent. Billy Charlton has a string of betting offices in Ireland and a gaming arcade in Bundoran. The doctor in question was John Kennellan. There's no suggestion that Superintendent Murray acted improperly. Nonetheless, Dr. Kennellan was later surprised to find Billy Charlton and the superintendent together at Cheltenham. They had flown over together in a party of 4 in Charlton's private plane. They both stayed in the Golden Valley Hotel. It was the kind of liaison which worried numbers of people in his Garda patch back home. Superintendent Murray will admit to being poorly regarded by a large number of Gardaí, some of it over small matters of discipline, some of it more serious, like a decision he made last February. It involved an admitted burglary. A local sergeant had recommended that a 17-and-a-half-year-old youth be prosecuted on 4 counts. At Ballyshannon, the inspector agreed. He wrote, "Proceed as recommended. This was an excellent detection." Superintendent Murray then took a personal interest and made a different decision, a decision that seems outside Garda regulations. Instead of the recommended prosecution, he decided charges would be deferred for 6 months and the youth cautioned. But the 17-and-a-half-year-old was not a juvenile. Even if he could be cautioned, the consent of the injured party is needed. The injured party says he wasn't asked. In addition, a court summons had been previously issued for the offences. As it happens, the youth was not cautioned, and after Superintendent Murray left Ballyshannon, the accused was brought before the courts. One complaint by a Garda in the Ballyshannon district made its way to the Commissioner's office, to Superintendent Murray, and to the Garda Representative Association. It covered more than 15 typed pages and pulled no punches. The guard warned of the thin line between squaring a case and corrupt behaviour. He complained of being harassed from within the force over his diligence in prosecuting drunk driving cases. He wrote that a Garda who cannot be influenced into dropping certain cases is a danger to the Old Pals Act in Ballyshannon district and may be removed to a remote station. I believe, the Guard declared, that any member who sells his principle of honesty and integrity would just as easily sell those of the community he is supposed to protect.
My relationship with Superintendent Murray goes back over 30 years, when him and I played football together, when we were very good friends, when we visited Buncrana together, when our 2 wives were living in one accommodation house, one house in Buncrana. And that goes back for a very long period. We've been very closely associated down the years. And as far as I'm concerned, I never in my life had one favour from Dom Murray, nor did I ask him for one.
Garda disciplinary regulations are clear on the matter of political involvement. Section 15 deals with prohibited spare time activities. This includes identifying actively or publicly with a political party, or behaving in relation to political matters in such a manner and in such circumstances as to give rise to reasonable apprehension amongst members of the public in relation to impartiality in the discharge of duties. The question of political involvement arose from a meeting in Castlebar. It was January 79, Fianna Fáil's Euro Convention. Taoiseach Jack Lynch congratulated those selected, amongst them Sean McAniff. The Euro Convention took place in the Traveller's Friend Hotel, a suitable venue with its large hall attached. 3 Bundoran delegates were present. It was a cold, snowy day and is well remembered. One man seen there at the time was Superintendent Dom Murray, who did have family and former Garda connections with Castlebar. What was he doing in Castlebar at the time when Fianna Fáil selected their European candidates?
As far as I'm concerned, he was up visiting his aunt in Castlebar on that particular day.
Mingling with the Fianna Fáil?
He was not mingling with the Fianna Fáil. I have said that.
But he was in the hotel with you.
He was in the bar.
He was in the hotel with you, wasn't he?
He was in the bar. But
of the hotel.
But the situation as far as the hotel is concerned, where the voting and that was taking place, was completely cut off from the hotel.
McAniff's story is not the full picture. We've confirmed from reliable sources that Superintendent Murray was admitted to the hall, quite separate from the bar, and during the convention. His presence looked like support for McAniff.
The fact that he was there on the day and the convention was taking place and he came down to the hotel speaking with a senior member of the Garda force in Castlebar and came in and had a drink and I was in the bar, that is just the situation.
You're chairman of the Fianna Fáil Common.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you for your accurate recollection of the Euro Convention in 1979 in Castlebar. Now, you were there.
Yes.
And Superintendent Murray was there too. Now, what is your recollection of why he was there and how he was there?
I am not aware of why he was there. I am not aware of how he got there. I travelled with the delegates from Bundoran to the conference. We attended the conference and voted. I remember citing Superintendent Murray in Ballinaw, Castlebar on that day. You know, and the question you're putting to me, I don't know.
Peter Brady knows that senior Fianna Fáil sources told Today Tonight the superintendent was admitted to the hall during the convention. Under Garda rules, perceived political involvement may be a disciplinary offence. Superintendent Murray admits he may have been in the convention hall, but he emphatically denies he was a delegate. Would you accept that, generally speaking, people were a bit concerned at what they saw as a close association between you and Teague?
No.
Would you accept that there was concern about that?
No, because I think the reflection...
But people have expressed it to us all over the place.
The reflection, I think, as far as I'm concerned, is in my popularity at the polls in Bundoran. If people are concerned, they always have the opportunity of expressing it. And they have had the opportunity, just as far back as June, of expressing any dissatisfaction they have had with me.
As a superintendent, Dom Murray's close, golfing, very public relationship with Councillor McAniff did him harm. The superintendent himself played McAniff's illegal gaming machines. He knows that looked bad. He did have a good local reputation on one important front. He was said to have had a tough and successful line against subversive activity. He was embarrassed over the encounter in Cheltenham. At one stage, the commissioner had asked him to retire, but he resisted and was transferred. Shortly before Superintendent Murray was transferred to the Garda printing section in Dublin, the Garda Representative Association were moving to investigate complaints against him. The GRA had appointed 2 members of their executive to carry out the investigation. The Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors had also made representations about him. Garda headquarters may have an act to clean up too. Many members who saw alleged malpractice in Donegal were simply afraid to complain to higher authorities. Down the years, Donegal has been widely regarded in the force as a penal posting. The county has had 10 chief superintendents in 14 years. They came and went. It was bad for morale further down. Those Gardaí who saw breaches of regulations and complained felt that Garda headquarters inevitably turned the spotlight on them. They believe that internal Garda inquiries don't work where the complaints are against more senior officers. Rank-and-file members like Garda's Lawless, Grennan, McWeeny and others felt punished for doing what their own code of conduct instructed them to do. And what of the conduct of people involved in the planning issue? The row leaders took courage in their hands and spoke out. This program has been about more than bricks and mortar and petty politics. It has examined serious matters in Donegal. But could it be that Donegal is not all that exceptional? This story raises fundamental questions about trust placed in public officials and about